Welcome to the Scariest Things Podcast, your gateway to the trends and tropes of the horror genre. This is episode 93. It's current. It's pandemic horror. And we here at the Scariest Things are hoping that everybody is taking the proper precautions, keeping your distance, not touching your face, coughing into your sleeve, wash your hands. So anyways,
wash your hands for 666 seconds.
The most battle of hand washing time.
And you will summon something horrific from your toilet.
Yeah.
So don't be surprised if you hear some splashing if you do it for that long. I definitely cut out at 665 seconds. As usual, this is Eric Lee, and we are now actually split three ways because we are exactly performing the way we're supposed to, away from each other. And this means Mike is now at home. So
I am 2.3 miles from Eric.
Right. So
in my bunker, my compound.
Plus 6 feet.
My cornice, yes, plus 6 feet. Yes. 2.3 miles plus 6 feet.
And once again, we are joined by
Liz Williams here in New Orleans, the newest epicenter of the coronavirus. But I'm locked in. I'm in the house.
Buttoned up
got
tight.
Nothing to do but watch horror movies, and I'm good at social distancing. I've been training for this my entire life.
Well, yeah.
No, I don't want to go out. I just want to stay home and watch movies.
Well, there was somebody out there who said that the people who actually are well suited for this social distancing are the shut-in nerds. So I am probably in very good shape. I've been doing this for 3 weeks now. This feels like a natural thing. But
I think it's actually it's horror podcasters are the best at this, because they're natural shut-ins, and two, they're prepped and ready because they have such a wealth of horror knowledge at their fingertips.
Yes,
they can withstand any pandemic that's thrown at them, zombie, viral, or other.
Yeah. So this, if you haven't checked it out, we just posted a dead list, for which this time it was so important and such a big list that this was a full team effort. And it's our pandemic and infectious horror movies. And I think we're now at 44 movies listed on that big old list. Some of them we'll be talking about today. But if you are at home and just can't get enough of the coronavirus, and you want to compare and contrast what fiction says, you can check it out.
How many of the 44 did you watch personally?
30. I think I've seen 30 of them. Yeah.
Oh,
no wonder. You've been home for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, not this week, but I mean, I've seen 30 of the ones that are listed. I could probably tell you there's, I think I watched 10 expressly for creating the dead list.
Not bad.
But there are a number of them, when we've talked about some of them, like Slither and The Thing, which is my all-time favorite, and
yes,
Wreck and Quarantine. There are some 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later, Andromeda Strain. There's a bunch of movies that I'm really familiar with, but pandemic horror. I guess it turns out it seems to be my bag. So
how many pandemic films made the top 100? Do you know?
Wreck made it for sure. 28 Days Later made it for sure.
Cabin Fever was that on there?
Cabin Fever.
One?
Cabin Fever was on the list. Let's Let me go to the site here for a second, and I'll.
I'm excited that even with your list of 44, 2 of my 3 are not on your list.
All right. This will be very interesting. So we may have to do an addendum.
Yes. I don't know if you're going to want to include them.
Well, I mean, come on. We have The Happening on the list, right? And we have.
Oh, we do.
And we have some other ones like I Drink Your Blood, and we got some real kind of iffy.
We didn't
movies.
say it was going to be all good.
No.
You have 44. They're not all going to be good.
No.
There might be a couple drags.
Yeah.
There might be some drags.
I don't think you need to see Resident Evil, but it's a very popular one. It's not a good one, but it's out there.
No.
So
Eric, since you are since this is your self-proclaimed bag, and you know what's what about pandemic horror, what are the say 3 or 4 characteristics that you found common to all these horror films, these pandemic viral infectious horror films?
I think first and foremost, they most often do not end with a happy ending. They tend to be apocalyptic.
No, they do not.
They tend to be grim, and then the ones that have happy endings tend to rush their way to solved it. Kind of like what is it, Law and Order, right? Dun dun.
Right.
So there's a countdown clock, and we've got to find the cure by the end of the movie, and that's something like Outbreak was a huge, I guess not a violator of the rule, but emblematic of that trope. Right, the countdown clock, and then find the monkey and save the world, and I think
and also not a horror film, Well,
but it's not. I think about this. Have you watched Contagion?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Contagion.
Steven Soderbergh.
Until now, was a drama. Now it's a horror movie.
Right.
The whole pandemic thing is horrible enough that I think you get a little bit more leeway in what's going to get on the horror list.
Yeah, I think
I agree.
I agree. I just watched Contagion again 2 days ago. I found it's
a good one.
Startlingly familiar. All the things that we talked about in our preamble. Don't touch your face. Wash your hands. It starts in China. It starts with a cough, and then you get a fever and the flop sweats, and anything that you touch is bad, and if you and it stays on there for a few days, and it just and they were tracking the epidemiology of the whole thing, and it was like, oh my God, it's like I'm watching CNN,
right?
But with familiar actors, and I thought, Soderbergh hit the nail on the head. He was Nostradamus, and he didn't even. It was like. It's one of those really well researched ones, and you just you saw things unfold, and you're going, thank God we haven't hit panic mode yet, because that's what Contagion. That's the big difference between Contagion and what's actually happening to us now, because everything else seems to be following in path, but we are not going through rioting and looting yet.
I don't know. Ask the people who are down on their last roll of toilet paper.
Yeah. Well, Mike and I were just talking about just wait until the people don't get their paychecks and the rent's due.
Yeah.
We're April 1st. Next, what is that? Next Thursday, Wednesday. Yeah, we're about 1 week away from total riot.
Yeah.
Total. All right. So you said they end on a grim note.
Yeah. A lot of them involve bites. For horror movies, right? Because there's a lot of these things, which is
do zombies count on that note?
Well, okay. Do you consider 28 Days Later a zombie movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
World War Z.
A pandemic movie.
Yeah.
28 Days Later, a pandemic movie.
Yes.
It can be. So you're saying it can both. We're not flipping on a binary switch here.
No, and actually part of the big list also I included things like parasites and killer STDs and things that aren't necessarily cough and you catch it kind of things.
Which was killer STDs?
Oh God, I just watched something and it was probably the most brutal thing. I'll get to it. It's on my list.
Okay.
I will be talking about it.
Was it Was it Trauma?
No, it's a much better movie than any
Not
trauma movie. Because it plays it straight, and it's. But we'll talk about it.
Okay.
Okay. On that, you want to kick it off, or is that going to be your number 3?
I'll kick it off. I will lead off with the incredibly difficult movie to watch because it reminds me of one of my all-time favorite movies, which I think Liz would say that I talk about too much, which would be
Raw.
Yes. This movie is not Raw, but this is a film called Contracted from 2013. This movie, for many, I know this is the movie that Amy Faust should stay away from at all costs because it involves a lot of things that make her really uncomfortable. There's a date rape, and this is how there's a young woman who's goes to a party and she's constantly getting hit on by these. What's that?
To be clear, you're comfortable with that.
No, I'm saying that this is. I am saying that this.
She's. He
doesn't like to watch them. I don't either.
That means you're comfortable.
I watched it. I watched it from front to back, and it's a horrifying movie. So
I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I'm kidding. Sorry.
But there are some things that there's a date rape scene. There's a Menses gone horribly wrong scene. There are maggots coming out of orifices that maggots should not be coming out of.
Lord,
It is.
Yuck.
It's a bridge too far, but it is incredibly well executed. It has.
Can I ask what orifice?
Yes, I'm guessing.
It is.
I'm curious.
Below the waist.
Okay. Ooh.
Yes.
For the ladies, I'm sure.
Yes. So
this sounds horrible. Cross this one off my list.
Maggots.
I'll just listen to your recap and consider it watched.
But the other thing, where I would draw also the connection between. Okay, so the long and the short of it is that this woman, she goes to a party. There's these guys who are constantly hitting on her because she's very pretty, but she's a lesbian. And she's waiting on her girlfriend, who it turns out is a ne'er-do-well, who's just this. She is a complete bitch who just doesn't treat her well. And they've been dating for 6 months, and so this Samantha, our protagonist, played by Najara Townsend, has been trying to get into calling it a relationship, and she's kind of new to playing on this side of the fence, but she's very proud of it. But the guys don't stop hitting on her, and but when her girlfriend doesn't pick her up at the party, she drinks herself stupid and gets taken advantage of. And it turns out this guy is carrying some sort of a brutal necrotic STD that heretofore unknown. Right, and it takes about they do a day-to-day watch, and it initially shows itself as it looks like pink eye. Her eyes turn red and start bleeding. She starts bleeding from the eyes, and then her period is like comes out of a 10-gallon jug. It's just really horrifying, and it and it turns out she is her organs are shutting down, but she's still trying to operate normally, and the whole thing is trying to find the guy who's going around doing this to people, and it's brutally nasty, but it's also like Raw. She gets put into situations that are socially horribly uncomfortable. Those things, as disgusting as the things that I was just describing, were hard to watch. Equally hard to watch was her trying to operate and as her life as a waitress when her fingernails are falling off. Right. And, and you go, don't go out there. And then the boss is
so much body horror.
Yeah, it is. It's not rated. It's a very hard R. It pushes NC-17. But it asks a lot.
Pass. Yeah.
Yep. So this is
pass.
This is the outer edge of contagious horror. It's not a pandemic, but it is certainly if this crud gets around, it's Ebola. It's just so horrifying in all the worst kind of ways.
When did this one come out?
2013. Small independent film directed by Eric Englund. So
has he done anything else since?
I will IMDb this here for a second. And
I think is this one available on Shudder? I think that I know what it's not the box because it's on my TV. I know what the cover looks like.
Yeah, you see her. You see her staring at you, and she's got one eye's gone completely white and milky, and the other, and her mouth she's got like the world's worst canker sore. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
All right. While Eric is IMDbing, why don't we move on to Liz for her first film of her terrible trio?
Okay, I am actually going to start with. So pandemic and contagion horror is not my bag. I try to stay away from the apocalypse and anything like that. So, but there is one that I love, and it is on our list. So I'm going to start with 2002's Eli Roth, co-written and directed Cabin Fever, because I think this is one of my favorite movies ever, not just Contagious. I love Cabin Fever.
Yeah,
did it make your top 25, Liz?
I think it is on my top 25. I will have to remember. If it didn't, it's because Hostel knocked it out. Because obviously, people who listen to the podcast know I love Eli Roth. Eli Roth, if you're listening, please come on. Let's talk about all your stuff. So I'm not going to talk about, they remade this movie in 2016. We're going to skip over that. We're going to talk about the 2002 film starring Ryder Strong, Jordan Ladd, Joey Kern, Serena Vincent, and James DeBello. And this is just trope after trope after trope after trope. The horror genres. So the film opens with this drunk homeless guy in the woods, and he comes across this dog that's dead and it looks, disgusting and bloody. And of course, this guy becomes infected and it starts giving him this disgusting skin rash. Meanwhile, we've got a bunch of college students who are going on a spring break, and they're going to a cabin in the woods, and they're just riding in their Jeep and partying and stopping for beer. And you've got every trope of the horror genre type of kid here. You've got the people who are definitely going to die having sex. You got that one D-bag who is just ooh, what's up? And has his gun and all this stuff. And then the sensitive guy and the sensitive girl who will they or won't they? You don't know. So they get to their cabin. Everything's great until this hermit approaches them and comes to their door asking for help. And they open the door and they see him, and he is just, sores and disgusting. So of course they're slamming the door, and some of them are like, no, we need to help him. And some are like, no way, did you see that guy? We're not going to help him. So he goes, the hermit, then they're seeing him out the window, and he's going by their car. So they're like, okay, we got to stop this guy from going by our car. And they accidentally set him on fire, Whoops. And then he starts coughing up blood and all over them. So one of them starts to get the disease, and as it's kind of spreading through, and there's some body horror here. We got a scene where one of the girls is taking a bath, and she goes to shave her legs and just starts shaving her skin off. That one,
that's
will
a
make
nasty
you cringe.
Scene. That's a real brutal
scene. One of them, you discover that she's infected while they're having sex. So it's definitely a don't have sex, kids, in a horror movie, because this is bad.
That did not make our sexy horror episode.
No, it did not. It is definitely not sexy horror.
For the record, Liz,
we'll have to do it.
Did I put this on my list?
Cabin Fever is number 9 on your list.
Yeah, see, here we go.
Coming in hot.
It also has some really hilarious side characters that I don't know, are kind of for no reason. There's this blonde-headed kid who sits outside of the store and the general store in the town and bites people, and he's just very strange looking and says yells pancakes. And then there's Eli Roth makes an appearance as this stoner weirdo named Grim who has a dog named Dr. Mambo. And then Giuseppe Andrews plays Deputy Winston, who is hey, you kids look cool. Do you like to party? And he wants to party with them in the woods. So it's ridiculous. It is blood filled. Peter Travers from Rolling Stone called it a blast of good, gory fun that just won't quit. And this one ends up then being in the water when the infected person falls in the water. So probably, we won't see it in that movie, could turn into a pandemic if it gets into everybody's water. So Cabin Fever, 2002.
That
classic,
was the suggestion.
Perfect of the genre.
Oh, it's a great
Cabin
one.
Fever? Have you seen Cabin Fever 3?
No.
Oh.
I haven't seen Cabin Fever 2.
Cabin Fever 3 apparently ups the ante on
Ty West.
Go ahead, Mike.
Ty West did it?
Oh, yeah. No, Ty West was tied to Cabin Fever 2. They brought him in to sort of like clean it up because it was a hot mess. And then he ended up leaving Cabin Fever 2 and basically had told them to take his name off the film.
Mm.
Yeah, if his name had been on it, I would have seen it. So stay away from Cabin Fever 2, probably Cabin Fever 3, and the remake of Cabin Fever. Stick to the 2002 Eli Roth original. It's wonderful.
It's funny and gross.
Yes, funny, gross, and it'll make you definitely want to have a couple beers while you're watching it. So,
Mr. Campbell.
All right.
What you got?
My first film, I'm picking this film for 3 reasons. 1, the title sequence. 2, the soundtrack. And 3, a 2003 publication by the Infectious Disease Society of America, which I looked up and is a real thing. And it said that the Andromeda strain is the most significant, scientifically accurate, and prototypic of all films of the killer virus genre. It accurately describes or details the appearance of a deadly agent, its impact, and the efforts of containing it. And finally, the workup on its identification and clarification on why certain persons are immune to it. This is the 1971 film Andromeda Strain, and it is not just a great horror film, it's a great film. I mean, it is almost pure perfection. It is a very, very well done film. A lot of the people that were involved with, for people that haven't seen Andromeda Strain, it's both relatively simple in its makeup, but it's also sort of hyper complicated as well. It basically involved a military satellite recovery team is dealing with a satellite that brought back an alien organism, and the military activates this sort of elite scientific team to investigate what this alien virus really is and why it killed off this entire community in Piedmont, New Mexico, where the satellite landed. That's the sort of simple part. It gets very, very complicated thereafter because it was written by, or the book, The Andromeda Strain, 2 years prior, I think, was written by Michael Crichton. And of course, as we all know, he
sciences the shit out of things.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. And there is quite a bit of science. And I think, if I was to give this film a rating, I would go from probably 5 stars to 4 stars, primarily because he does science the shit out of it. And the tail, probably the last quarter of the film, is really, really heavy on science. And there is an awful lot of talking, and it kind of takes all the drama and excitement out of the film. But otherwise, man, they keep it moving pretty damn fast at the very front end, at the very back end, primarily because of this weirdo experimental jazz musician, Gil Amell, who also did The Ultimate Warrior, Embryo, The Sentinel, Starship Invasions, Blood Beach, Frankenstein, The True Story. I didn't even know that was a film. Killdozer and Death Scream. Killdozer, yeah. He does the soundtrack, and it is, I think, as I described in what Eric was talking about with the big list of pandemic films, the most unnerving bleeps, bloops, and scratches. And if you ever wondered what an alien virus would sound like, Andromeda Strain
sound like jazz.
Yeah, it does sound like jazz.
That's the sound of a mutating double helix DNA strand right there.
That's probably right.
Crichton actually, he actually drops in DNA, RNA, amino acids, pH strands, and a lot of the, he was baptizing himself in genetic virus mutations in order to prep for this thing, and he did it with Jurassic Park too, right? Or and any of his other efforts, he and this was why he was popular, was he tried to get he was a futurist and trying to predict how something like an alien virus might happen, or how you bring back dinosaurs. I mean, it's he really wanted to figure out what might happen, and it's a fascinating watch. I think I actually I didn't mind all the sciencey stuff. I think that they put in a bit of a mutating virus that ate away at plastic towards a nuclear meltdown, and that was your timing clock, right? When we talk about the trope of we've got to solve this thing before something goes completely haywire. In truth, these guys were actually pretty methodical about how they went about their process, but they had the impetus jammed down their throat because of the nuclear explosion that was going to take them out.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing I forgot to mention when we were when I was trying to prompt you for one of the other very, very common characteristics of the pandemic viral infection horror films is the idea of government involvement and government cover-up and government conspiracy. I mean, that is such a huge piece of all these, because it's like the government they're the only ones that have the wherewithal, the cash cow, the resources to be able to unleash these kind of things on society. I totally forgot about that. And this I think is probably the most, if you were to take all of the 44 films on the big pandemic list, we were to take them all, this is probably the most emblematic of government conspiracy, in my estimate, in my humble
there are
estimation.
A bunch of them. It is a trope. It is definitely a trope.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I actually, and going back to Contagion, I really liked how they played both sides of that coin. You had Jude Law playing the conspiracy theorist, and then you had Lawrence Fishburne as the CDC director, well-meaning guy, but doing some things like telling his wife or his fiancée to leave Chicago because he had insider information. And it's like,
right.
It's like, you get it, but at the same time, there was a cover up, but the cover up was it justified? Fascinating stuff. Anyways,
the last thing I would note about the Strain is that Michael Crichton is a ripoff artist, because in prepping for this episode, I did watch a film from 1965 called The Satan Bug. And The Satan Bug is kind of a poorly told version of the Andromeda Strain, and it came out 6 years earlier.
But
so
they
I'm just going to lay that marker. Right. Anyway, Eric, what do you got for your number 2 on your list?
Well, the number 2 movie on my list is, I think, it's gotten panned before, and unlike Mike, who comes prepared with all of the critic reviews, there's a film by Barry Levinson, who brought us Diner and Rain Man and a lot of stuff sort of in the Baltimore area, and he did a movie about Chesapeake Bay being something really wrong with the water in Chesapeake Bay, and this is The Bay from 2012. It was. I was watching it, and I was like, it's a shaky cam movie, and so I was like, well,
okay.
But he is really good with the shaky cam. I thought I actually got, it sort of intersperses, it's spliced together different kinds of formats to create one narrative from multiple different viewpoints.
Right.
It has, unlike some movies like Outbreak and Contagion, it has no recognizable actors, and so it has what is essential for a found footage movie, in that it seems like you don't recognize actors, right? And so the footage felt like actual footage, and it's super gross. I mean, it turns out it's a parasite. It's like it's a mix of chemicals being dumped in for a pig lot feed across on one side of the bay, getting dumped in, and creating a very aggressive strain of water louse that likes to eat flesh.
Mm-hmm.
And you fall in the water, you come back with it, and then it just sort of gets. And this was like they had a 4th of July festival, and everybody's like puking up blood and falling apart and running around and it empties out. I forget what the town. It looked like it might have been Annapolis or something like that. But I thought they played it straight. But I did not expect Barry Levinson to go super gory, but it
mm-hmm.
it was. I thought it was.
It was surprisingly gory because I remember when it came out, I was like, "Holy crap! Barry Levinson made a horror film. I got to see this."
Right.
And I was shocked. I was really, really shocked by that.
He went there, and just like heads
oh my
caving
God,
in.
Did he ever? Yeah.
And just and that when you see these things come crawling out of the body, because you don't know what at first you thought it's like a necrophagic Ebola-like disease, which is like a flesh-eating virus. And no, it's a critter. But critters count in this discussion of the whole ecosystem. The whole town's gotten infected and scared, and there's a quarantine and people can't get out, and the panic and the only news coverage is this kid.
There's government cover up too.
Yeah, no, and the mayor gets it because it's like he sowed the seeds of his own destruction.
Yeah.
Although it was more
like
of sort of
Jaws.
lowercase greed than like he's not a conquer the world villain. He's a guy who wanted to thought to try to take advantage of a good money situation for the county and blew it. So
right.
So anyways, that was a bit of a surprise for me. I didn't expect to like the Bay as much as I did, but this was another one of the ones part of my binge for the dead list. So Liz, what's your number two? Go ahead, Mike.
I like about half of the Bay. I like the front half.
Stay on the boat.
I like
not go in the
Bay.
You like the Virginia side, not the Maryland side.
Yeah. Huh?
That's right. I like the side with corn dogs.
Okay.
No, half of this movie is good. Half of it is stinko. I'm just going to say. All right.
I'm
Liz,
more
what do you got?
forgiving on that one.
Okay. I'm doing a little bit. I'm stretching the horror net and just going to throw horror around the situation it's these people in, because I'm going with a super, super, super black comedy. It is written and directed by Todd Berger, who is actually from New Orleans, and it is called It's a Disaster. I'm going to read you the summary of this movie. 8 friends meet for their monthly couples brunch, but what starts as an impromptu therapy session / airing of domestic grievances takes a sudden, catastrophic turn when the city falls victim to a mysterious attack. It turns out it is a radioactive dirty bomb. So trapped in the house and unsure of their fates, these seemingly normal people become increasingly unhinged to hilarious, surprising, and revealing results. Okay, so It's a Disaster was written and directed by Todd Berger, and he's part of the Los Angeles-based comedy group called The Vacationers. So this film stars Rachel Boston, David Cross, America Ferrera, Julia Stiles, Jeff Grace, and Blaze Miller. And it's available to stream on Hulu. And it is these people, you do not feel for these characters. You're like, I hope they do die in this apocalypse. So they're all coming together in their couples brunch. They're waiting for like one couple that's always notoriously late. And then there's one of them who is like a comic book collector. So he's trying to bid on eBay and he can't figure out why he's like not getting eBay on his phone. And then he's like, can I go use your computer? The computer goes out, and then he starts bitching at his friends that they like didn't pay their bill. And it's just back and forth, like kind of mumblecore.
Was it David Cross playing?
Jerks? Yeah. Well, no, David Cross plays a professor who is meeting the group for the first time. He's Julia Stiles' new boyfriend who's showing up at brunch. So then when they realize that like, no, like all the power is out, and their neighbor comes over dressed in a hazmat suit, and he's like, what are you guys doing? Just sitting around eating like brunch, drinking mimosas. You didn't hear? And they're like, no. And he's like, well, like a dirty bomb went off. There's VX nerve gas like everywhere. People are dying in downtown. It'll probably be like an hour before it gets here because they're like 6 miles away from downtown. So he tells them they have to like seal up the house and everything. So they only have like one roll of duct tape. And then there's the one stoner guy who finally just it was like, no, it's duct tape. And they're like, no, duct with the T. So it's just these people, it's just hilarious and funny. And, you know, then of course the couple who's always late, you know, you're waiting for them to show up to see if they made it through the attack. And then it takes kind of a weird little turn at the end and ends up going much darker than just the dirty bomb when they decide what they're going to do, if they're going to, you know, stick it out and try to survive, or if they're just all going to like end it at once themselves at brunch. So it is a weird little comedy with, you know, just horrible people in it. All the couples are terrible, and it's darkest of the darkest black humor.
But that might be something to help get you through.
Yeah, exactly. You need to lighten it up a little bit. You got to laugh to keep from crying sometimes. So I think that this is one where if you're socially distanced and sheltering in place and you just need to laugh, but you still can't get the pandemic off or the, you know, quarantine off your brain, It's a Disaster is on Hulu to stream.
Excellent. Good call, Liz. Yeah, for my humor version of this, I would throw Slither in for my my humor pandemic thing. That's wacko fun. So,
yeah, that is a good one.
All right, Mike.
All right.
Speaking of wacko fun and sticking with radiation sickness, which is always wacko fun, I picked the 1983 film, which came to the U.S. It was called Incubo, Nightmare City, or City of the Walking Dead.
Can you even get this?
Directed by... Oh yeah, you can get it. You can get it. I was telling Eric, I was first introduced to this. When I was in Washington, D.C., I used to go to, which I guess has been kicking around now for, over 30 years, the Washington, D.C. Psychotronic Film Society. And there was a guy, this African-American gentleman by the name of the incorrigible Dr. Schlock. And the very first version of the Washington D.C. Psychotronic Film Society that I attended was Nightmare City, where they showed this absolutely bonkers Umberto Lenzi zombie radiation sickness film that was so bananas. I couldn't even believe what I was watching, and I was so sold on it. Of course, Umberto Lenzi directed some of Eric's all-time favorite films, Eyeball, Spasmo, and Cannibal Ferox.
I am not going to watch this movie.
It is, and for the Quentin Tarantino fans out there, it stars Hugo Stiglitz. And if you've seen any of Quentin Tarantino stuff, he obviously refers to Hugo Stiglitz. This is basically an airplane exposed to radiation lands in Italy, and blood-drinking zombies emerge armed with not just their teeth, but knives and guns, and they go on a rampage, slicing, dicing, and biting their way through the Italian countryside. This is also a film that assistant professor of film at Louisiana State University, Danny Shipka. Liz, I don't know if you know this gentleman. He described this film as absolutely terrible in every way, as well as referring to poor makeup effects, poor acting, and a plot that makes no sense.
This is a Tom Savini movie, by the way, for the makeup effects.
No, that's you're thinking. You, Eric, are very close, but you were thinking of Virus. However, I'm not sure if he did it, but Fangoria magazine, obviously. Hey, Fangoria, if you're listening, We love you, Fangoria. Mm-hmm. Fangoria did announce that in 2015, Tom Savini was going to be directing a remake of Nightmare City, but we have not yet seen the remake of Nightmare City. It is my other favorite review came from the zombie movie encyclopedia academic Peter Dendel wrote that the film is at best is a forced and pointless test of endurance. And that's, I mean,
forced test of endurance. That's awesome.
I feel like that's my entire existence as a podcast. A forced and pointless test of endurance.
That sounds, anyway, that has got Mike Campbell written all over it.
100%. Yes. Nightmare City, 1983. Bonkers. No, sorry, 1980. It is 1980. Yeah. It came to the U.S. in 1983. This is a 1980 film. Nightmare City, 1980. Umberto Lenzi. Eric, what do you got for your final movie of the evening?
Okay, so for my final movie, I've got a kind of an oddball one. And this is, it's almost like a stage play. And it's a funny little Canadian piece called Pontypool. And it's, I think this comes with all kinds of caveats, because
it is based on a book.
Yeah. So I open up my conversation about this on the dead list saying sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me except now. This movie takes largely inside of a small Ontario town's radio station where there's a shock jock who is struggling to be sort of the cuddly local radio or I don't know if they call them disc jockeys anymore, but your radio host. He had sort of this kind of wild man, kind of a someone who would incite kind of hot radio talk, or political talk. And so this is kind of like NPR. This is kind of like your neighborhood, talk about the bake sale going down, in the downtown or whatever. And he wants to be an instigator. And things kind of go a little odd when their man in the air, who is actually not really in a helicopter, but he's in a yellow Dodge Dart at the top of a hill and uses sound effects to try and pretend he's a helicopter weatherman, reports that there is a riot at a doctor's office. There are a lot of people going in, and apparently they've busted down the walls and they're going crazy, and then he cuts out, and so the people in the radio station are going, "Hello, what's going on out there?" And it turns out that there's sort of like a semi-zombie apocalypse kind of a situation where people start their first reactions are that they start repeating themselves, and then they start twitching, and it turns out there's a very strange way that language plays into it. That language is a trigger for this epidemic. And so it becomes, it starts off very apocalyptic, kind of almost like an H.G. Wells War of the Worlds kind of a situation where you have someone trying to describe to you the horrors over the radio, and also having limited amounts of information coming in because you have an unreliable source in your guy from the not helicopter, and then you get the BBC calling in and asking, what can, that depending on this radio station as the eyes on the ground for what apparently turns out to seems to be a citywide riot, and then cannibalism, and just murder and mayhem and all this kind of stuff. It becomes a bit of a head scratcher towards the finish line. I will admit that it's kind of weird, but it is a fascinating watch. I think it's one of those things where I think it's more intellectually interesting than outright enjoyable. So, I think take it for what it is, but it's unique.
It's based on a book called Pontypool Changes Everything, which is actually the second one in the Pontypool trilogy, written by Tony Burgess, and it was done as a stage play.
Ah, okay.
So in the UK, and it's supposed to be a radio play in Canada, but it doesn't say that they ever did it.
I think
and all the other stuff he wrote looks real weird. So when I just kind of Googled him, it says he blends ultraviolet horror and absurdist humor.
Yes.
Inflicting nightmarish narratives on the quirky citizens of small town Ontario.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, it is definitely, it does play out like a stage play, but much like The Bay, I liked half of it. But I think your description, and this is not half of Pontypool. Well, it is half of Pontypool. I think your description is right, because it does sort of lose its way towards the end, but just the pure enjoyment of getting to that point where it sort of loses its way is recommendation enough, because it is a very interesting exercise.
Stephen McHattie is excellent as the disc jockey.
Yeah,
he's the radio host. As Grant Mazzy,
wild.
He's got a great voice.
Yeah, he does.
And Stephen McHattie also, he was the dad in Come to Daddy, or the false dad, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God, you're right. Oh, yeah. Oh, whew.
So, yeah.
Man.
So he's done a couple of great...
still have nightmares about that guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like, he is the dad that you really don't want. So, but it's interesting, actually, if you IMDb Stephen McHattie, he's had a very, very long career. And but he's sort of making a dent in independent horror, so it's I think it's really cool. So, anyways, Pontypool.
Good choice.
Yeah. Yep.
Good choice.
Good choice as well. Yes.
Your number one.
All right. My final film, The Guardian wrote that it features acting as wooden as a tree, clunky camera work, and crude special effects that reduce audiences to tears of laughter rather than terror. And Slate magazine wrote that certain aspects of this film seem too bad to be true. And this film is so bad that I'm going to recommend the way that I first saw it, which is the Riff Tracks version, when they do a live, commentary to this film. And this is Birdemic. Shocking.
Oh, man. That's an all-time stinker.
2010 independent romantic horror film is how it's classified. Written, directed, and produced by James Wen. It stars Alan Bagg and Whitney Moore. And I'm going to read the summary of what this is about from Riff Tracks page, because, that's how you get it. It says, Birdemic Shock and Terror is the story of a software salesman who founds his own solar energy company after cashing in his stock options. Where this differs from the other countless Hollywood tales of software salesmen who found their own solar energy companies after cashing in stock options is that occasionally birds attack and kill people. So the birds in this film, so after our character sells his stock options and starts his own solar company, and his girlfriend gets an offer from Victoria's Secret to become a Victoria's Secret model, they realize that something is going wrong in the world around them. There's wildfires and dead birds are just turning up on the beaches. So after they go to a motel, they find out that their town is under attack by eagles and vultures that spit acid and explode into flames when they come down on the ground, because they've mutated from and become toxic because of global warming. So this has a message.
Yeah.
We warned you. We warned you about global warming.
They join up with their friends. Yep, you've been warned. They join up with their friends to try to save the town. This is one of the worst movies you will ever see, but seeing it in Riff Tracks is so good. There is a scene where they go to like a karaoke bar. So I guess to get around, copywriting, she sings this song called Hanging Out with My Family. And I mean, just YouTube that, Google that for yourself. I'm not going to sing it. But
come on, Liz, you can't be any worse than the movie.
But trust me, I have walked around singing that song in my house. It is, you got to watch the Riff Track. It is a treat, and it will also make you laugh and forget about coronavirus for a minute. And it is available to stream on Prime. Birdemic, Shock, and Terror. The riff tracks live.
Liz is getting a Birdemic DVD for Christmas this year.
Oh, it's so bad. I've seen it probably like 10 times. Like sometimes when we have groups over and someone hasn't seen it, we're like, oh, well, we have to watch it right now. So like, gather around, everybody. We're watching Birdemic. It's so bad.
So how would you compare it to Sharknado?
Tonight.
You know what? The boys could watch it with you. There's awesome. Some racy sex scene because she is a Victoria's Secret model after all.
Well, you know. Hey, everybody's got to grow up at some point.
At some point.
This is what you call parental guidance.
The hard facts about global warming when the Birdemic comes your way.
Science, boys.
So, yep.
Science. It's all in the name of science. All right. Okay, my last film of the evening of my terrifying trio is the 1977 Canadian-American body horror film written and directed by David Cronenberg, featuring Marilyn Chambers. Yes, that Marilyn Chambers. This, of course, is
Raise your hand if you remember Marilyn Chambers out there, kids.
Yeah, speaking of growing up, woo, yeah. Do not. This is also partially a PSA. Do not see the 2000 version of Rabid because it sucked. This is, although this one does somewhat follow this plot line, which is, again, no more simple. Marilyn Chambers, she's a woman who, after being injured in a motorcycle accident, she undergoes a surgical operation, which was basically just described while they were doing the surgery as a simple skin graft from her thigh to her chest. And what happens is
in a David Cronenberg movie. It's not going to be simple skin graft.
You get a phallic appendage
under the skin. Yes, under the skin graft, it hides a phallic stinger that she uses to feed on people's blood. Yeah, it is. It is, of course, very, very gnarly in that regard. The thing I love about it is it's, a lot of those Cronenberg films from the 70s, obviously like The Brood had a lot of these same qualities. They're shot like either in like winter or spring or winter or fall. Everything looks dark and bleak. They're oftentimes way out in the countryside, and they oftentimes feature this sort of hyper modern architecture of these weird medical facilities.
It's supposed to be Montreal.
All those things.
I don't know if it actually is Montreal, but they say that it's Montreal. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. But it's a great film, and it does play out it kind of plays out like as sort of more of like a zombie type film, in that the phallic stinger ultimately infects people and drives them crazy, and they sort of get kind of a rage type virus where they go and attack other people.
Foaming at the mouth.
But because she's the originator of the virus, she's sort of somewhat self-aware and guilty about the fact that she's the one that has caused this virus, and so she's kind of stuck in this very conflicting role, going back and forth between like needing to feed on people with her phallic stinger versus feeling bad about having fed on them with her phallic stinger. The interesting little tidbit about this film was that apparently Ivan Reitman, who was the producer on this film, yes,
really?
That Ivan Reitman, yes, David Cronenberg really, 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 really wanted to cast Sissy Spacek in the lead role because he was so impressed, I guess, with her work that she did in Badlands. But the studio vetoed the choice and said her accent is like her. I think she's from Georgia, Virginia. Anyway, wherever Sissy Spacek is from, they said her accent is way, way, way too thick. We need somebody else. Ivan Reitman came on the scene, and he said, "Hey, Marilyn Chambers wants to get out of the blue movies, and she's looking for something like a mainstream role." Boom, voila. I don't know that she ever did any other mainstream roles. I think she did a lot of like schlocky stuff. She might have been in Birdemic. I don't know. She might have been. She might have been in Nightmare City. I don't know. No, but she's actually really, really good in this film. Obviously, she'll be known for something very, very different than that in her other roles. But in this film, she is really wonderful, and she kind of carries the whole film. I would so recommend people see the 1977 version of Rabid and stay the hell away from the 2019 version of Rabid, which is Suck City.
Yeah, the Soska sisters.
Suck City. Yeah.
That they are so they're provocateurs sometimes without a focused idea of what they want to do they swing and miss a few times, and it sounds like Rabid, which just came out, stinko.
Super stinko. Super duper stinko. All right, Eric, you have, I understand, a very, very special grave digging for us this evening that is directly tied into tonight's topic.
Quick, give me a radio sound effect intro. This is a public service
Breaking
announcement.
news.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. RKO Radio. We are actually combining forces with some of our other Portland horror podcast friends, David Day and Bryce over at Horror Movie Talk, and also the Dread Frightened Brew Crew with Lee Despain. And we are going to be trying to get out here soon a Save Our Cinemas appeal to all of you horror fans out there in this time when things are really, really tight for everybody, but our small cinemas, the mom and pop shops, are in real risk of going under. And a number of them have already set up a way to get donors to support their staff while they're on hiatus. And we will be trying to get as many of these theater support pieces out there. Or pay close attention to our website, scariestthings.com, 1T. Here in the Portland market, I think we've got Cinema 21, we have Cinerama and the Roseway, and Liz in New Orleans.
Cinemagic. Cinemagic.
Yes.
Here
And
in New
Hollywood.
Orleans, we have the Broad Theater and the Britannia and the Zeitgeist and the Chalmette Theater. Those are our big independent ones that are screening horror.
I think we also have a number of other, when we have our festival friends out there, and we're also trying to get out to places like in Fort Lauderdale, where they do popcorn frights, or in Film Quest in Provo. We've already gotten a mention for the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival, the Nighthawk out in Brooklyn. These are the little theaters that actually support what we love. We're not looking to try and save AMC or Regal or even something like Alamo Drafthouse. Those are corporations where, even if unfortunately the staff might lose work, those companies will still be around after we come out of this. It's our little theaters that we are trying to protect and find ways to get you, our listening audience, connected up with your favorite local theaters. And what we would like to do is to have any of you who are listening who have a favorite theater in your neighborhood, and you would like to propose them for us to list, send us a link through our website at scariestthings.com. We do have a send us information on there at info@scariestthings.com. and we would love to list your theaters if you think there's a theater worthy of inclusion, because we're going to get through this. And we want when the veil gets lifted, we want our favorite places where we like to watch movies to reopen. And I think we would also say, go to the theaters when we get the all clear. Resist going to the big cinemas. Go to your little independent theaters and help them out. So.
Yep.
Yeah, and probably the ones here are doing, if you buy gift cards now, they're giving some money to the staff, to help them through until they reopen. And then just bought your ticket for when everybody can go back, hopefully soon. So that's a great way to support them.
Yeah. I mean, you should always support these kind of theaters to begin with, but now is more important than ever.
Yep.
Yeah. And actually, there's a couple of theaters that may actually be offering some sort of a streaming link. If you find a movie that, and particularly there'll be independent horror movies that some of these theaters will be showing, that you might be able to get trailers for, or not trailers, I'm sorry, screeners that are not actually available on Netflix or Amazon yet. And since you're all safely distancing yourself at home, you can check out some of these theaters, and we're going to try and we'll try and provide links to the theaters that are actually doing that on our website.
Yep.
So with that is your public service announcement from the Scariest
Public
Things.
Service announcement
with guitars.
Stay safe, wash your hands, and stay away from your friends.
yeah. Avoid, because you never know if they're carrying some sort of necrotic, nasty disease. But we're going to get through it.
Watch out for the birds, for endemic that's coming.
All right. So we'll check back.
I'm going to take.
You got a tagline?
I was going to take us out with I have a tagline.
Excellent.
Line from a film, and I think it's quite prescient. This, of course, is the 1973 George Romero film, The Crazies. And George Romero posited on the hype poster, "Why are all the good people dying?"
Oh, no. All right, we'll check you out in a couple of weeks.